Welcome to Dawg Day Afternoon, your home for free NBA picks, Major League Baseball picks, and our best bets for Friday, April 15th. I am Gilles Gallant with FTNBets on a show powered by the FTN Network, and I'm joined as always by Daquan Young. Now, Quan, we didn't get the bounce back we wanted on Wednesday. We still managed to go 2-2 with the picks for a nice little half-unit win, but of course I had to get greedy and put a half unit on C.J. McCollum to get a double-double, even though he was cooking the Spurs the entire game.
Listen, you got to go for it. Being up is being up. Being down is being down, and we're going to take the half a unit, move forward into today. I'm looking forward to the picks today.
Well, and speaking of being up, so let's be a little transparent here. The show record is 16-13 through 9 shows, plus 5.6 units of profit. So, again, I'll take that any day. Quan, now, a lot of people, it's a holiday, right? It's Good Friday. I wanted to know from your perspective, because we talk a lot about this off air, but do you plan to follow tradition and maybe eat a little fish today?
I will not. We don't really follow the rules as far as Passover, Good Friday, all that good stuff. I'm going to be partaking in some beef franks today. There's a hot dog eating contest that I'm doing for Mad Lab and the MMA. So I'm going to film it, but there will be some hot dogs consumed on my end. If you guys recall, if you watched Last Word Cheetah last summer, I downed like 6.5, 7 hot dogs in about 5 minutes. And it was probably one of the worst days of my life. So in preparation for this year's hot dog competition, I'm gonna watch Pat, who works there. He's gonna do a couple. We set the line at 8.5. I took the under because I know from experience it's gonna be a tough get through. If he pukes, he's out. Man. But I'm gonna nibble. I'm gonna dabble a little bit. I might not race him, but just getting my prep for the 4th of July and my own hot dog eating contest.
Like, just talking about eating 8 hot dogs just like made my stomach just flip.
Disgusting.
Man. Like,
absolutely disgusting.
So yeah, we're gonna actually get started with the picks here in a second. Again, I'm not picking an over/under on those hot dog props. I'm gonna take unders if I have to. But Blue Jays repping the shirt today. Just got it in the mail this morning. Vladdy Guerrero shirt. They're back in Toronto tonight, so you know what that means. We got Blue Jays home run props to bet, Quan. We're 3-7 overall betting these. We didn't bet them the last 2 games at Yankee Stadium. We bet them to the first 5 games. Went 3-7 overall. Not obviously a great record, but the fact that there's such big plus money bets, we're up 7.6 units of profit just betting on Blue Jays home run props when they're playing at Rogers Center and a couple of games here at Yankee Stadium. But we've got 2 of my favorite Blue Jays home run props that I'm going to read off here in a minute. And we've got some picks for the NBA play-in games tonight too. And then in the second half, Ryan Horvat of BETMGM tonight is going to be joining us for the second half of the show. And he'll give us top Major League Baseball bets and NBA play-in bets for Good Friday. I'm really excited to have him back on. Big friend, good friend of the show. Had him on a couple of times already. Now, before we get started with my picks, all my picks today are brought to you by and bet on at Caesars Sports. And if Caesars is available in your state and you haven't signed up yet, now is the perfect time. Make sure to use the promo code FTNBetsCaesar. That's FTNBetsCZR. Caesars will give you an $1,100 free bet just for signing up. And if you already have a sportsbook account with another spot, that's okay. Get another one, because having multiple sportsbook accounts is essential for prop betting and line shopping. It's something that I do every day to get the best odds, and consistently, Caesars has been my go-to for finding the best plus money option. Sign up now with Caesars Sportsbook today. Okay, so I say this before we read the picks, but I just want to give people a refresher. Here's how it works. I give out my Omega pick, my Beta pick, and my Alpha pick, and each one is ranked based on the confidence of me winning the bet. So let's get to it. First pick is the Omega pick. We're going to start with the Blue Jays home run props, Quan. And we're going with George Springer at plus 320 and Bo Bichette at plus 550. And Blue Jays home run props, they've just been so profitable for me since the start of last year. Home run props were king last season. They're heating up again this year. So here's what I do for a little refresher for people who maybe are kind of getting used to this or new to this. What I do is I take 2 bets per Blue Jays home game. And I take 2 sluggers between 1 through 4 in the lineup. and then I'll change it up based on the pitchers and also the odds based on what they're offering from a respective sports book. So you can swap between, George Springer, Vladimir Guerrero, Bo Bichette, or Teoscar Hernandez. And as I said at the top of the show, 3-7 this year, 3-3 technically if you're just using the Rogers Center picks that I've made this year. Tried to get a little too cute when they were at Yankee Stadium. Took Matt Chapman and Alejandro Kirk. It did not work out. That was 0-2. But they're facing Dalton Jeffries with the Athletics tonight, a pitcher who doesn't really have a ton of starts under his belt, so not really a lot of analysis we can do for his background. But I don't project him to go more than 5 innings pitched, at least just this way it looked so far through his 3 starts that he's had under his belt. And why I'm not really worried about not having a ton of data is because he's allowed 2 home runs in 3 of his career starts, 3 home runs over 12 innings pitched. Also, the A's pitching staff this season, they've been getting shelled to start the year. 10 home runs allowed in 7 games played. That's tied for 26th in Major League Baseball. So even if they don't necessarily get it off of Jeffries, I think there's still a good opportunity against this Athletics bullpen. And with this lineup, the way that they're mashing, I really think this trend continues. So give me Bichette and Springer to go yard tonight.
We're going yard with the Blue Jays. I like the pick. I know you said Rogers Center. You got the home cooking. I don't really, I saw Vladdy Jr. light up. Was it?
Garrett Coleman crushed him for 3 home runs. Or no, 2 home runs, and then the Yankees bullpen was the
reliever. Yeah. Listen, I've been playing the show a lot this past few weeks, so I'm gonna run with the Blue Jays. I've been running with the Yankees, but if they're hitting them like that, we're gonna go with the Blue Jays and hit them out.
Yeah, and I mean, you want to take guys between 1 through 4 in the lineup as well, just because by and large they're going to get more at bats. Obviously there's guys between 5 through 9 in this lineup that can still hit home runs, but for me, you're just limiting your opportunity. And some of those guys, like Matt Chapman, for example, it's so hit or miss. I'd rather take guys who I know that are going to be consistently in the lineup as well. They're always going to be at the top of the order, whether they're struggling or not. And their home run rates are just higher than those other players right now in the Jays lineup. So, all right, let's move on now to the beta pick. We're going to be looking at this Clippers-Pelicans play-in game matchup. Now, before the show started, news just came out that Paul George is ruled out tonight for this matchup due to COVID safety and health protocols, which actually I think helps the bet that we are going to do tonight. We're going to be taking Ivica Zubac for a double-double at plus 290, and we're going to take the big center because I think he's going to be, especially now with Paul George not playing, he's going to be heavily involved in tonight's matchup, because I don't think they're going to be able to do the small ball style of play the way that they were doing in latter stages of other games. Now, Zubac against Minnesota, he finished with 7 points and 9 rebounds. That should trend up in this matchup as well against the Pelicans if he doesn't get into foul trouble. And the reason why is because the Pelicans have just been getting worked by opposing centers, man. They rank bottom 5 in points and rebounds to opposing centers since the All-Star break. And that ranking stays the same when you start using different splits, like last 30, last 14, last 7. Jakob Portal, when they played against them, he had 16 points and 9 rebounds in the play-in game. And as well, the Clippers and Pelicans, they just played recently on April 3rd, Quan. And Zubac went off in that game, only 25 minutes. He had 16 points and 14 rebounds. I think odds makers, they were already kind of projecting a lower scoring game without Paul George, which likely means lower field goal percentages, which then equals more rebounding opportunities. And for what it's worth, again, I wouldn't bet this just based on this stat, but if you're looking just like at his last playoff game trajectory, 3 of the last 4 games, he had a double-double in them if you go back to look at that playoff series against the Suns last year in the conference finals. So we're going to let the Bosnian baller eat, and we're getting a double-double at plus 290 for Zubac.
Now, quick question. I know that the Paul George absence is going to affect this game wholly. Why, if for those people that watch the show on Wednesday, would you recommend them looking at anything for CJ McCollum?
Well, for CJ now, initially I was a little hesitant to it because the Clippers' perimeter defense is actually quite strong. And if Paul George is potentially out there, maybe Marcus Morris, I just think it would be a little bit more difficult for CJ to get off his shot the way that he was just running through that Spurs defense. And the Clippers, rather, pretty much for the entire season were top 10 defense, even without Paul George for a big portion of it. So they can defend the ball. They're just not very good at scoring, obviously. So for me, like that automatically puts it into equation that I think actually CJ might actually have a little bit better of an effort tonight. His points, rebounds, and assists was 33.5 before this news came out. I haven't had a chance to look at the book to see what that prop bet line is now, but either way, I consider maybe taking the over, but I don't feel confident in it. So if you want to take it, again, I wouldn't talk you out of it. I'm just saying that the stats and the projections, it's just not lining up the way it was when he was playing against the Spurs 2 nights ago.
There you go.
All right, now we're going to move on to the alpha pick. And it's actually a pick that we cashed in the last show, and I have to run it back, man. We're going with the Red Rocket, Kevin Huerter, over 2.5 3-pointers made tonight against the Cavaliers at plus 110. He cashed for us in the last game in the first quarter, had 3 3-point makes like within 10 minutes in the game. So we're going to have to go back to the well on this one. And over the last 20 games for the Red Rocket, he's averaging 6.5 3-point attempts per game, hitting over around 2.6 per game. A couple of elements really bode well for the 3-point prop. For example, with Huerter, over 50% of his total shots are coming from behind the arc. That's usually the type of 3-point prop you want to gun for. And he's hitting just under 40% on his 3-point attempts on the road. One of the things I like to do, too, is just looking at matchup history, because a lot of these guys that were on the Cavaliers, outside of, like, say, like Evan Mobley, were on this team. And since the start of last year, the Atlanta Hawks and Kevin Huerter have faced the Cavaliers 6 times. In those 6 games, he hit 3+ 3-pointers in 4 of them. And for reference, he shot over 53% from behind the arc on an average of 5.5 attempts per game versus the Cavs in those games. So he's shooting 53% from behind the arc in all of those games against this team. So, again, I want to say it's going to be a little bit tougher of a matchup because Cleveland is above average in defending the 3-point line compared to the line that we were getting against the Hornets. So the only thing I would say is if you're not loving the Huerter prop as an alternative, you could look at DeAndre Hunter as well instead of plus money for over 1.5 3-pointers. That's around like plus 110, plus 115, depending on the sports book that you're looking at. But against the Cavaliers this season, did it in 2 or 3 games, and he hit 2 3-pointers against Charlotte in the play-in game. Just went bananas in the third quarter and put up like 16, 17 points. That being said, give me the Huerter threes all night tonight.
Now, let's ask you, Joe. I know we say constantly throughout this show, all back-to-backs aren't equal. Would you have, just off the top of your head, how many times you've gone to the well and hit on these plays? Because, like, I was watching the Hawks game the other night, and, you know, Huerter came out on fire, and I said, you know, cash it, first quarter. Like, do you typically, you see something you like and there's no line movement? Do you love going back-to-back just to test the water?
I do, but again, it's very matchup dependent for me. So a lot of the time when I bet, I kind of look at it more like this: is the tiers goes odds, matchup, stats. Because I feel like a lot of the time you can look at the stats and you can talk yourself in and out of a play no matter what. But it's the odds to me that are telling the big story on whether or not this is going to happen. And I feel like a lot of the time people will probably go back to this just because he did it so well. For me, then I like to look at the matchups. Okay, who's defending him? How are they faring in these? Is he doing it more at home as opposed to in Cleveland, for example? Yeah. And it's pretty much even. You know what I mean? It's not, there's no real edge there or edge there. So for me, the matchup isn't an issue as well. And then from a stats perspective, it completely lines up because if you look at his track record over the last little while, especially over like the last 20 games, he's just been killing it from 3-point and just shooting mainly from behind the arc instead of trying to drive and get to the basket or whatever else. So in this kind of instance, I do like going back to it. I expected actually when this line was to come out, I expected it to be closer to like minus 110, maybe even minus 115. So the fact that we're getting it at plus money, I feel like that's a nice little bonus.
Okay.
All right. So those are my 3 picks. We have got the Blue Jays home run props, Springer and Bichette. We are going as well with Kevin Huerter over 3-pointers at over 2.5 at plus 110. And we are taking a swing on a double-double for Ivica Zubac at plus 290. We're going to take a quick break here. We're going to bring Ryan Horvat from BetMGM tonight. He's going to come on and he's going to give us his best bets for the NBA play-in games and Major League Baseball. Stay tuned. We'll be back in 1 minute. Welcome back to Dawg Day Afternoon. I'm joined now by Ryan Horvat of BETMGM tonight, one of the sharpest handicappers I know. Privileged to have him back on the show overall, man, just a really good dude. Welcome back, Ryan.
Thanks so much for having me, man. I'm so jacked to be on. I have actually been off the show for the last couple nights. We had a COVID scare, which it seems that's going around, man. Like everything is all my handicapping. I'm going back and looking now with this Paul George news. Paul George obviously not going to play tonight. He enters the health and safety protocol for the Clippers, which terrible news, good news for one of my props that we're going to get to. But man, it's just good to be talking sports again and betting on some games because I have the 4 TV set up in my living room, but I was quarantined in my room to make sure I didn't have COVID. So I've been down to one screen, man. You don't understand. Like when you're used to watching 4 games at one time and then you're stuck in a bedroom watching just one screen, it's tough to do. It's tough to do, especially when you have multiple bets.
It's definitely a first world problem if I've ever heard it. But either way, I empathize with you. And Ryan, we had got an amazing slate tonight. These 2 play-in games, even Paul George or not, I'm pretty amped for them. Some decent baseball matchups on the card. Let's talk about the play-in games. Let's have a look at this Cavs-Hawks game right now because the line pretty much hovering around +2, Cavs +2. Money line right now sitting at Cavs +115, Hawks at -135 with an over-under of 223. Very interesting matchup. Atlanta looked like kind of gangbusters against Charlotte. And the Cavs, even though they did end up losing to the Nets, they kind of showed a little bit of a spark there in the second half, held tough. How do you see this game playing out, and who do you see getting the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference?
It's funny, I'm going to stick with what I've been doing all season long as far as my handicapping when it comes to the Atlanta Hawks. I fell in love with the Atlanta Hawks last season, like most of us did in the playoffs, man, against Philadelphia. John Collins had the T-shirt where he's dunking over Embiid. But then, like this season, they've just been so inconsistent. So I actually grabbed Cavs at 2. I was hoping for a 3. It was never available. There was a 2.5 that was available at BetMGM -110. And the reason I grabbed it now, so Jared Allen's going to try to play tonight, it looks like. I'm not sure how many minutes that's going to mean or how effective he's going to be. But going back to the Hawks, they've just been inconsistent all season long. You could trust them at home. You just can't trust them on the road. It's a whole nother story. They're 16-25 straight up on the road, and they're 14-27 against the spread. They're still without John Collins. He was great last season in the playoffs. I think that's been a bigger loss than most are talking about. Atlanta, I trust them offensively. They average 115 points per game. They're the second offensive rated team in the league. If you look at the NBA advanced stats. However, defensively, they're a nightmare, man. They're 26th in the league. And when it comes to playoff basketball or play-in basketball, I mean, these are the playoffs. I look at the team that defends, the team with the star player, but really I like a good defensive team because it becomes a half-court game. And Atlanta's beat up right now. No John Collins, no Lou Williams, and then Bogdanovich is a game-time decision. I
think he's going to play, but I don't know. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And I think they're getting a little bit too much love right now, Atlanta, because of, like you said, what they did against Charlotte. But Charlotte, there's another team that does not defend, and that was an embarrassing performance from them. The Cavs, going back to how awful Atlanta's been on the road, the Cavs have been the opposite at home. They're 25-16 straight up, so they're hitting at a 61% clip, and they're 23-17-1 against the number. So again, I think Jared Allen will be the key if he plays because he's missed the last 19 games. In those games, they've won 7-12 down the stretch. Even if he only gives you 20-25 minutes, though, I like their length and I like their size against Atlanta with Evan Mobley. Also, Darius Garland's not getting enough respect. I mean, you saw what he did in the second half against the Nets. He led that comeback effort. He scored 34 points on, I believe, 13-24 shooting. So I actually like the Cavs. Both teams like to slow down the pace. And I'm going to go with the better defensive team, the taller team, the home team. And also, like, Atlanta just seems like the easy bet. Everybody I know is going with Atlanta. Yeah, I'm going to take a shot with Cleveland, man, to pull off the minor upset. So give me the Cavs at home.
Yeah, and a lot of early money and early bets immediately went in on Atlanta. And I'm not really a guy who subscribes to reverse line movement or anything like that, but you were immediately seeing it at 2.5, and I've seen it down to 2, which is very interesting when you see majority of the money on a side and they're not getting the love to get it to 3 or something along those lines. So very telling. But again, I don't necessarily subscribe to you have to just blindly fade that team because of that. The question I wanted to ask you, Ryan, is just as an aside, what would you think if somebody was to say, actually, I don't even want to do the spread. I want to take Cavs money line at home at the +115 number?
I like that too. And I was actually considering that. I do think, and especially when we're looking at a spread, which is pretty much a pick 'em, the 2.5. I think Cleveland's going to win this game at home. Again, Atlanta's just been a bad bet on the road. I don't know what it is. And it's funny, like I said this about Atlanta a couple of weeks ago when they were in the 9th spot. And I said, this is the most confident 9th seed ever in NBA history because, like, anytime you watch them on League Pass, you'll see Trae Young will drop 40, usually against the Knicks or
at home or something along those lines.
At home. And they talk so much trash, but they've just been so inconsistent. And I like Nate McMillan. And I almost feel like I said this on the show a couple times. I almost feel like them making that run to the Eastern Conference Finals and losing to the Bucks. I almost feel like that was almost like a negative or like a bad thing for them because they ran it back. Like they did bring back John Collins. They paid him that money. Now he's injured. I almost feel like maybe they should have went a different route and tried something new because it just, you thought, okay, they reached the Eastern Conference Finals, so they took their like bumps and bruises because they're a young team. Trae Young is still really young. Usually the next step is they get even better. They took a huge step backwards, and they were a worse team this year, which didn't make any sense except for when they're at home. So, yeah, I do like Cleveland on the money line, especially that we're getting plus money because the spread is so small.
Yeah, a home dog in a playoff game is something you want to consider, especially in an elimination spot. But let's look at the other play-in game again. Now with this recent news of Paul George being ruled out is going to completely skew the line. I've seen it go all the way from Pelicans up to -1.5 from a swing. And then I've seen in other books where they're coming back now, and now the Clippers are -1. I have no read on this spread or side, but you have a pretty decent player prop that you were considering for this matchup. And I think a lot of the time with these play-ins, I think most people are going to gravitate to player props, especially for this matchup. And you made a case for me off air for Reggie Jackson to potentially have a big game. So what's your top prop for this matchup?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Reggie Jackson. And, I was looking at his props, and last season in the playoffs, he really became a favorite of ours. We were going with the PRAs, the points, rebounds, and assists. I also do like the assist number at 4.5, but now without Paul George, I'm just going to stay away. I'm going to go over 17.5 points, and I love the price right now at BetMGM -105. Now, it's something to monitor, obviously, without Paul George. Where are these props going to go? Where are the numbers going to go? Is the number going to go up to 18.5? I haven't seen anything yet, so I do really like Reggie Jackson, a.k.a. Mr. June. You saw what he did in the postseason last year to go over 17.5, man. He had his toughest matchup last game in the play-in. I mean, he had, defensively, I don't think there's a better on-ball defender than Pat Bev. It's crazy to say that.
Maybe Marcus Smart, maybe.
Marcus Smart. I love Marcus Smart, as you know, and I love the Boston Celtics. But, I mean, Pat Bev, when he's on a mission like that, like he was out for blood. That was a revenge game after the Clippers dissed him, didn't give him the money. You saw that. I mean, he was talking to the GM and the owner, and he was talking a lot of trash. He had himself a couple Bud Lights after the game. That was a tough matchup. And still, look what Reggie Jackson did against Pat Bev in that matchup, man. He had 17 points on 7 of 18 shooting, and it was a slow night for Reggie Jackson. He rebounded. The assist numbers were there. That's why I think the PRA is still worth a look. But I'm going to go with the points because if he drops 17 on Pat Bev on 7 of 18 shooting, I like this matchup. I'm a big CJ McCollum fan. In fact, since New Orleans has picked him up, they've been obviously playing much better. That's why they find themselves in this position tonight. I love him offensively, but defensively, I think Reggie Jackson goes for at least 20 tonight. You saw what he did last season. He averaged 18 points in the playoffs, and he did it on 41% three-point shooting. So you gave out the Kevin Huerter three-point prop. If you don't trust the points with Reggie Jackson, I think another look might be the three-pointers, but I think that number goes up without Paul George. Also, the volume's going to be there, right? 18 field goals.
That was the point, yeah.
That was with PG on the floor. And Paul George got off to a slow start in that game, too. Took over in the third quarter, obviously. But I really like Reggie Jackson because of the volume. With no PG, man, I think we're getting 23, 24 field goal attempts. So for me, I'm going to go with the points tonight. I think he scores 19 minimum.
That was the point exactly what I was going to make. Is just based on volume alone. If the line stays at 17.5 and you're still getting at -105, -110, that's a great bet to make just because he's going to take that minimum just in shot attempts. So 3-point attempts probably. And again, I'm not going to say that the Pelicans don't defend well, that he couldn't do this, but I think the safest pick out of all of them is just the points. And then that way you can take out all the other shenanigans that might come a part of it. Just because there could be times where, he might go 5 for 20, but he goes to the line, like 10 times and still hits just enough shots, like a couple 3-point shots to get to 18 points. So that's all you really need. So great pick on that. Love the Reggie Jackson pick. Now let's move over to the diamond. First matchup that we were talking about off air, Cubs-Rockies. Marcus Stroman, Herman Marquez on the bump, pretty low total for a Coors Field matchup. It's at 9.5. Cubs is sitting there at plus 115. Rockies are minus 125. Rockies are home faves. You don't really see that very often. And both teams are 4-2 coming into this matchup. Which way are we going to be betting this matchup on the diamond?
So, full disclosure, I am a Cubs fan. That's why I'll have my eyes on this game because, unfortunately, even though they sold away all my favorite players last season, I still watch this team, and I have a rooting interest because my aunt is actually the personal chef for Marcus Stroman. So she's followed him from Toronto
Did you know?
New York, where he was awesome. He made 32 starts last season, had an ERA around 3, so he had a really good season. And now, don't get me wrong, this is a gross matchup, man. I was on the Cubs last night, and I also went with the under last night because the total was at 11. Obviously, we're always going to see the high totals at Coors, but tonight only 9.5, so I'm not going to touch that. But Stroman was pretty solid in his debut for the Cubs against the Brewers. He gave up 1 run, 2 hits in 5 innings, but the control, like he had some control issues. He threw a lot of balls. He was struggling to throw strikes in that game. He should have picked up the victory. He did give up a solo shot. They took him out of that game, and then the bullpen collapsed. But last season, Stroman absolutely dominated against the Rockies. Now, this lineup is pretty much the same. They do add Chris Bryant, but he dominated against Colorado those 2 starts. He was 2-0 with an ERA of 0.64 over 14 innings. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I also trust the Cubs bullpen so far. They've been solid, man. They're currently right now 4th in the league in batting average, in 6th in on-base percentage. So the bullpen so far doing their job. Stroman, I think he's going to have a bounce back, if you want to call it a bounce back. That was a solid first start, but I think he's going to have a really good start tonight again because he does own the Rockies. 2-0 last season, 0.64 ERA. And if you look at the lineup, 68 career plate appearances, this current Rockies lineup that they're going to throw out there tonight against Stroman, they have a 206 batting average, just a 238 slugging percentage. And against right-handers this season, granted short sample size, we're only a week into the season, they're just 22nd in the league in on-base percentage. So I actually really like the Cubs on the money line tonight, especially at that price. You know, Marquez, he's going tonight, so that may scare some people. Last season, there was serious regression in the second half. He had a good first half of the season. Then the second half of the season, man, he kind of fell apart. The ERA was over 6. The whip went up. In his lone start against the Cubs last year, he got pummeled. He gave up 5 earned runs, 7 hits in just 3 innings. Different lineup, but he does struggle. So I'm going to go with the Chicago Cubs, probably for the last time this season. There's not many teams I'll take the Cubs against. The Rockies are one of them, and then the Pittsburgh Pirates in the NL Central. The only teams I trust the Chicago Cubs against. But I do like Stroman in this matchup tonight.
So you probably have seen at this point for me, I love to bet home run props, Jays home run props exclusively.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you then from your perspective as a Cubs fan, who is the guy that we should gravitate to the most for Cubs home runs and power? Like, who do you think, especially at this stadium where the ball could travel? Like, if you were thinking of throwing out a lean there on a Cubs home run hitter tonight, is there anybody that you would think right off the top of your head? It's like, yeah, that's the guy I'm going to be gunning.
I mean, yes, Suzuki's been awesome. Obviously, he's probably, I mean, it's really early in the season, but if he
plus 500 tonight right now, from what
plus
I see.
500, I like. Have you seen a number? Now, he wasn't in the lineup last night. So Wilson Contreras, I couldn't find a number on him this morning, but if you could find a number and you're getting anything like 4-1, 5-1, I think he's worth a look as well. He's probably
plus 350. What I just checked it right now. I'm just looking at the line. So plus 350 for Contreras and plus 500 for Suzuki. I mean, I'm not really the type to tell people not to bet home run props. I mean, especially if I'm the one who's doing it specifically for my favorite team. But that's why I was going to say, from your perspective, because because of how ingrained, you have a little bit of an edge to kind of know the tendencies, because obviously it's hard to be that ingrained on 30 baseball teams if you're not following baseball year round and only as the only sport that you're doing. So again, maybe take a look at Contreras and Suzuki tonight in this matchup against Marquez, who, as you were mentioning, did struggle in the second half, whether it be at home or even just on the road.
And really quickly on that, I'll say this too. Like, I'm looking at guys that have faced off against Marquez already. And, you know, Contreras is one of those guys, and 44 career plate appearances. This lineup that they're going to throw out there tonight against him, 310 batting average against Marquez and a 381 slugging percentage. And the Cubs, again, like, they've been solid at the plate, 12th in Major League Baseball right now, batting average, hitting 243 as a team. Take a look at Contreras tonight. I could see him going yard, and I really like that number.
And you might be able to get better odds. I only looked at one book, so there might be better odds than plus 350 out there. But Contreras, nice little lean here for a Cubbies home run tonight in Colorado at Coors Field. All right, now you got a bonus pick. Normally we only do 3 picks with the guests, but you had a bonus pick in, which, again, I wanted to hear more about it. specifically for an NL Central matchup between the Brewers and the Cards. Got starting pitchers right now. We got Miles Mikolas, Freddie Peralta. Both offenses have kind of sputtered so far. And you've got a first 5 bet that you love for this matchup. What is it?
Yeah, so I played the Brewers to win the World Series. The only concern I have is that lineup, man. They didn't get any younger. I love Andrew McCutchen, but I mean, you add him, you add Hunter Renfroe, and they strike out a ton. So I wanted to go with a Freddie Peralta. He's going to take the mound tonight for the Brewers. I wanted to go with his K prop, man, but the last I saw, it was juiced like minus 145. So I ended up just going with the first 5 under in this game, which at the time, 4.5. The price was minus 106 over at BetMGM. Freddie actually had kind of a rough first outing against the Cubs compared to what he did last season. Like, he struggled with his command. He threw 88 pitches. Just 46 of those were for strikes. The thing with Freddie, when he has a rough start, I always go with him in the next start. He's very streaky, I guess. Like, early on in his career, last year he was excellent as their number 3 starter. That's why I love this team so much. If you look at the rotation, you go Corbin Burns, who was the NL Cy Young, Brandon Woodruff, and then Freddie Peralta. Last season, he had Cy Young stuff, and he's their number 3 starter. He allowed 3 runs on 3 hits, 4 walks, still struck out 6, though, against the Cubs, even with those control issues. So the strikeouts, those are always worth a look. But I think this is going to be a low-scoring game, and I don't want to rely on St. Louis's bullpen or Milwaukee's bullpen right now. So I'm just going to go with the first 5 under. Again, Mikolas scares me a little bit because he's only made, 2 starts in the last 2 years because of this forearm injury. His first start of the year, he struggled a little bit against Pittsburgh, allowed 2 runs on 6 hits. Gave up 2 walks and only made it through 3 2/3. But he also, that was his first start in a long time. There was obviously some rust. There's got to be some nerves when you haven't pitched really in 2 years because of an injury. You don't want to re-injure yourself. It's your first start in a while. And he had 41 pitches in the first inning. He kind of calmed down a little bit after that. But I like the first 5 under. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. Even if he does give up a run or 2, I think Freddie Peralta is going to be excellent. Again, if you don't mind paying juice, go with the Freddie Peralta strikeout prop. But because of the price, minus 106, I'm going to go with the first 5 under here, 4.5 runs.
No, I love it, man. So that's 4 picks for you, Ryan. So I've got 4 picks. You've got 4 picks for tonight. That's all for us today. Before we go, though, I need you to tell the folks at home where we can find more of your work and what we can maybe expect from you coming up.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Ryan Horvat. I'm on BetMGM tonight. That's our show. It's on the Odyssey Network. We're on a couple stations, across the country, and then YouTube, and then Twitch as well, which is becoming bigger every single week. I swear we have a bigger following on Twitch. So BetMGM tonight, that's the show. And then I'm on Twitter at Ryan Horvat.
BetMGM tonight. I've been on that show quite a few times. I'm sure I'll be on it again at some point in the coming weeks. And for Dawg Day Afternoon, we'll be back on Wednesday on the FTN Network with another special guest and more daily betting picks. So make sure to follow me on Twitter at GDog5000. As he mentioned, make sure to follow him on Twitter at Ryan Horvat. And I want to thank everybody for watching Dawg Day Afternoon for Good Friday. Bon chance.